Portal hypertension is defined as the hepatic venous pressure gradient equal or more than 10 mm of Hg. Normal hepatic venous pressure gradient is about 5 to 6 mm of Hg. So when it raises to about 10 mm of Hg, it is called as portal hypertension. Now a question arises that what is the hepatic venous pressure gradient? The hepatic venous pressure gradient is the difference of pressure between wedged hepatic venous pressure and free hepatic venous pressure. The wedged hepatic venous pressure reflects the pressure in portal vein, while the free hepatic venous pressure reflects the pressure in hepatic vein, mean the systemic circulation. How we measure it? We measure these two pressure through transjugular route with the help of a catheter. Initially, we pass a catheter through the transjugular route and we measure the pressure in hepatic vein. This pressure is called as free hepatic venous pressure, and it will reflect the pressure in systemic circulation, mean hepatic vein. After this, we wedge the hepatic vein and venule, mean we block it. After blocking it, there will be an increase of pressure and we measure this increased pressure. This increased pressure is called as wedged hepatic venous pressure, and this wedged hepatic venous pressure will reflect the pressure in portal vein. So when we measure the difference of pressure between the wedged hepatic venous pressure and free hepatic venous pressure, it is called as hepatic venous pressure gradient. Normally it is about 5 to 6 mm of Hg, and when it raises to about 10 mm of Hg, it is called as portal hypertension, mean that there will be an increase of pressure in portal venous system. What causes the portal hypertension? The portal hypertension is caused by many causes. The cause will identify by the site of obstruction to the flow in portal venous pressure. But the most common cause of portal hypertension worldwide is the schistosomiasis, but it is uncommon in non-endemic area. Apart from that, in children and adolescents, the most common cause of portal hypertension is the extrahepatic portal vein obstruction, while in adult the leading cause of portal hypertension is cirrhosis. But we should understand, or we should study in detail the causes of portal hypertension. To understand the causes, let's look at this diagram. The cause will depend on the site of obstruction to the flow in portal venous system. To understand it now, let's look at this diagram. The causes are broadly classified into 5 classes on a basis of site of obstruction. The first one is the prehepatic presinusoidal, mean the obstruction in the portal vein, and it is usually caused by the procoagulopathy or abdominal trauma including surgery plus thrombosis due to sepsis. The second one is the intrahepatic but presinusoidal, mean that the obstruction is in inside the liver but before sinusoid, and this kind of obstruction occur in schistosomiasis, congenital hepatic fibrosis, drugs and sarcoidosis. The third one is sinusoidal, mean that there is an obstruction in the hepatic sinusoids. In this sinusoidal obstruction which lead to the portal hypertension is caused by cirrhosis, polycystic liver disease, nodular regenerative and metastatic malignant disease. The fourth one is the intrahepatic but post-sinusoidal, mean that the obstruction is in liver but after the sinusoids, and it is usually caused by the veno-occlusive disease. And the fifth one is the post-hepatic post-sinusoidal, mean the obstruction is in the hepatic vein. This kind of portal hypertension is caused by the Budd-Chiari syndrome. So these 5 classes: prehepatic presinusoidal, intrahepatic presinusoidal, sinusoidal, intrahepatic and post-sinusoidal, and post-hepatic and post-sinusoidal are the 5 main causes of portal hypertension. Now come toward the clinical feature of portal hypertension. The clinical feature in portal hypertension result principally from 2 processes. The first one is portal venous congestion and second one is the collateral vessel formation. The portal venous congestion will cause splenomegaly and or hypersplenism, mean that the spleen will get enlarged in size with overactive spleen, and the splenomegaly is a cardinal feature in portal hypertension. And the second one is the collateral vessel formation. The collateral vessel formation is a characteristic feature in portal hypertension, and as a result of it there will be a shunting of blood from portal system to the systemic system. So there will be a visible vein, or the potent vein, which is usually non-functional, will become functional in portal hypertension. These veins include the vein on anterior abdominal wall, which will radiate from the umbilicus, called as caput medusae. The second one is that the esophageal and gastric varices, mean there will be a formation of varices at the gastroesophageal junction. The third one is the fetor hepaticus. The fetor hepaticus is a consequence of collateral vessel formation, because as a result of collateral formation there will be a shunting of blood from portal system to the systemic system. As a result of this shunt, the ammonia plus mercaptons will shunt from portal to the systemic system, and the patient will have a fetor hepaticus, mean the musty odor in breath. Apart from that, we can also have an ascites in portal hypertension, but ascites is more common in post hepatic cause, such as a hepatic outflow obstruction or the cirrhosis of liver. It was all about the clinical feature of portal hypertension. Now come toward the investigation or the diagnosis of portal hypertension. Remember that the diagnosis of portal hypertension is usually clinical. We diagnose a patient on clinical grounds. Apart from that, we can measure the pressure, such as free hepatic pressure or the wished hepatic venous pressure, but it is usually not performed because it is an interventional procedure. Other than this, we can look at the CBC. The CBC will show thrombocytopenia, leukopenia, and anemia, and there will be a enlarged spleen on the ultrasound. In short, the clinical features plus thrombocytopenia in the presence of anemia or leukopenia with hypersplenism is a diagnostic clue toward the portal hypertension. Now come toward the management of portal hypertension. The management of the portal hypertension is largely focused on prevention and control of the variceal hemorrhage. The variceal hemorrhage is the most common manifestation of portal hypertension. So whenever we aim at the treatment of portal hypertension, we aim to prevent or control the variceal hemorrhage. By the variceal hemorrhage, we mean bleeding from varices, predominantly the esophageal varices, which lies at the gastroesophageal junction, and gastric varices, which are located in the fundus of stomach. So how we will prevent it? For the prevention of the varices to bleed, we use beta adrenoreceptor antagonist, beta blockers. Predominantly, we use propranolol at a dose of about 80 to 160 mg per day, nadolol at a dose of about 40 to 240 mg per day, and carvedilol at a dose of about 6.25 to 12.5 mg per day. We use these drugs once we perform endoscopy and we find the when we find the varices on endoscopy. So we use these drugs to prevent the varices to bleed. It was all about the prevention of the varices to bleed. But once the varices start bleeding, how we will manage the acute variceal bleed? To manage the acute variceal bleed, remember this algorithm. So whenever a patient presents with suspected variceal hemorrhage, if a patient presents with suspected variceal hemorrhage, the first step is to start IV terlipressin and antibiotic prophylactically. The terlipressin is a synthetic vasopressin, and we give the terlipressin in a form of intermittent injection in a dose of about 2 mg QID till a bleeding stop. And after this, and once the bleeding is stopped, we reduce the dose to 1 mg QID for 72 hours. Along with that, we use prophylactic antibiotic such as ceftriaxone, ciprofloxacin, or the piperacillin tazobactam to prevent the sepsis. After this prophylactic therapy, we perform the urgent upper gastrointestinal endoscopy. When on endoscopy, if the varices is present, we should undergo the endoscopic therapy. And if the varices are not present, we should stop the terlipressin and we treat the patient as non-variceal hemorrhage. What is meant by the endoscopic therapy? The endoscopic therapy, we mean the variceal banding or the sclerotherapy. In the variceal banding, we place a band on the varices till the varices obliterates. While in sclerotherapy, we inject a sclerosing agent to stop the bleeding. The banding is superior to the sclerotherapy except the gastric varices. In gastric varices, we cannot place a band. So in this situation, we use a sclerotherapy by using a sclerosing agent such as a cyanoacrylate glue. Once a patient undergo endoscopic therapy, the next step is to look for the hemostasis, mean that whether a patient is maintaining their vitals or not. If the patient is maintaining their vital, we should continue the terlipressin for 72 hours, and we should introduce the beta blocker as secondary prophylaxis, and patient should continue the endoscopic banding program to obliterate the varices. The endoscopic banding program means that patient should undergo repeated endoscopy after 2 to 4 weeks to band all the remaining varices. But if the patient is not maintaining their hemostasis, the next step is to perform other procedures such as balloon tamponade, mean that we will stop the bleeding by placing the Singstaken Blackmore tube. We can perform the emergency tips, or we should perform the portosystemic shunt surgery, and in severe cases we can perform esophageal transection. It was all about the management of acute variceal bleed. Now at the end I will discuss a short topic, the congestive portal hypertensive gastropathy. Long-standing portal hypertension causes chronic gastric congestion. It is called as congestive portal hypertensive gastropathy. On endoscopy it is represented as multiple area of punctate erythema or the snake skin gastropathy. You guys can see the snake skin gastropathy in this image. In PHG, the mucosa can erode and patient can present with iron deficiency anemia due to the blood loss from multiple sites. So to treat the PHG, we use a iron supplement to prevent the iron deficiency anemia along with repeated transfusion to prevent the low HB. Apart from that, for prophylactically, we use a propranolol in a dose of about 80 to 160 mg per day. And if the patient is not improving with propranolol, we can use a TIPS procedure. In TIPS procedure, a stent is placed between the portal vein and the hepatic vein. So by this way, there will be a shunting of blood and it will reduce the portal pressure. So it was all about the portal hypertension. If there is still any question, you guys can ask, and stay tuned for more update.